Hello friends, this is Nitin Kulkarni. In the last video, we looked at how to build a war file using Jenkins job. And in this video, we will look at how to build our Docker image and push it to Docker Hub as a part of our DevOps process. Let's start by logging into Jenkins. And the first thing that we will do is to download one more plugin called Publish over SSH plugin. And the reason why we are doing that is because we want to execute our commands on the Ansible controller node from our Jenkins job. And remember that these two VMs are two different VMs and we need them to communicate with each other using SSH. So let's first download that plugin. Go to Jenkins, manage Jenkins, from there manage plugins, and in the available tab, search for publish over SSH plugin. Select the plugin, install without restart, and let it install. Okay, the plugin has been successfully installed. Now let's see how to make use of this plugin. Let's go to Jenkins, manage Jenkins, configure system, and once the screen comes up, that's where we will configure our publish over SSH plugin to enable connection to the Ansible controller node. The screen is now loading, and within, if you keep scrolling, you should see a publish over SSH section. This is it. And here is where now you start configuring our communication with the Ansible controller node. So click on add and now start inputting these values. You can call this whatever you want. I'm going to call it Ansible controller. Host name is where you specify the IP address of the Ansible controller node. So let's go get it. So our Ansible controller node is here. So this is our Ansible controller node. Let's take the IP address. So remember to copy the private IP from here. Go back to our Jenkins server, specify the IP address. Now here is where you have to specify the username and the passphrase. So remember we had specified or we had updated our configuration file on the controller node to set password notification to yes. So remember that. So that's this is the reason why we had specified that particular. I meant to say password authentication value to yes, and we even had created a 2-minute video to understand how or why we set the password authentication to yes. So that this is the reason. So here is where we specify the username, which in our case is ANS admin, and now we specify the password by clicking on the advanced button and use password authentication, and we specify our password. All right. So now we want to make sure that everything is okay. So we are just going to click test configuration, and it is a success, which means we are now successfully connected to our Ansible controller node using this particular plugin. So click apply and save. Now the next thing that we will do is since we are going to have to build Docker images on the Ansible controller node, we need Docker installed on the Ansible controller node. So let's do that. Let's go to our MobaXterm, log into. I've already logged into the Ansible controller node, and now I'm going to install Docker. So sudo su, and I'm going to install Docker by running the command yum install docker. Let it finish. The Docker installation is now successful. Okay, we're going to now start building our image. And the very first step in building any Docker image is to create a Docker file. So let's do that. Let's go back to our Eclipse, click on File, New File, and select the parent project. And let's call our file Docker file. Click on that. And here is where I start writing my Docker image. The first the very first step in Docker image is to tell Docker image which base image I'm going to use. So in my case, I'm going to use Tomcat because I'm going to deploy my image on the Tomcat. And then I have to specify the war file that I need to copy to this Tomcat server. So here I'm going to say copy dot. I need the name of my war file, which I can find from my Jenkins workspace of my previous job. So let's go back to our Jenkins. So this is where my war file is located, and this is the name of my war file. So I'm going to copy this, go back to my Eclipse dot war file, and then I'm going to paste, and then I'm going to move it to user. Sorry, paste it to user local Tomcat web apps. Okay, so what I'm telling is I'm telling the container to copy my dev pipeline.var from the current workspace, which just dot signifies, and copy it to user local Tomcat web apps folder. Okay, so my Docker file is now ready. It's a very simple Docker file. I'm going to commit it to my repository. So I'm going to team commit stage it my first Docker file, commit and push. Okay, it has been pushed. Let's go back to our repository and make sure that it is there. Okay, so the file is already there. Cool. So now my Docker file is ready, and let's make sure that it is the latest version. So I'll open this. Yep, and this is my Docker file. Okay, now that my Docker file is ready, it's time for me to use that Docker file and create an image. So I'm going to create a new job to do that. So I'm going to say click new item in Jenkins, and let's call it build and push image. Let's make it a freestyle project. Click OK. Now what I'm going to do is I'm not going to specify a source code management repository here. And the reason is because to build the image, I don't really need the source code. I do not need to compile the code. I do not need to test the code because my previous job has already done that. But what I need is I need the artifacts from that previous job available to my current job, which is this job, so that it can use those artifacts and build the image using those artifacts. So I'm going to, like I said, I'm not going to specify any repository location here because I don't need it. Instead, in the build section, I'm going to copy the war file and the Docker file that the previous job brought into its environment in, and can copy it into this current job's workspace so that this job can then take those artifacts and create an image out of it. So I'm going to click on build, and in the build step, I'm going to say invoke shell. And in the invoke shell, I'm going to just copy the commands that I need to copy the artifacts from the previous job to my current job. So these are the commands that I'm going to type in the execute shell box. So this is saying is that copy the my dev pipeline.var from the previous job, which is build var, take that, locate that var in the workspace of that particular job, and then copy it to the current workspace. So basically, every job in Jenkins is has a workspace, and that workspace is located in var lib Jenkins workspace directory. And all I'm doing is that I'm asking it to copy the uh, war file and the Docker file from the previous job's workspace into my current job. So my $job name is nothing but the environment variable, which I can find from here. I see the job name here. So all that does is it tells that use the current job's name and copy these files um, into the workspace. So click apply, click save. And as far as this build and push image job is concerned, we're going to build it step by step. So first, let's run it now and see if it is copying our files successfully. So let's build. Let's check our console. It says, yep, it is successfully copied the files. It is now let's check our workspace to see if the files are really there. Our workspace is telling me that these files are already present here. We have done quite a lot in the past few videos, so I think it is time for us to do a quick recap of where we are in the end-to-end picture. So far we have set up our Eclipse, set up our Git, establish communication between Eclipse and Git, and then we have set up three VMs, one for Jenkins, one for the Ansible controller node, and one for the test server. On the Ansible controller node, we have installed Docker manually. On the Jenkins server, we have set up two jobs. One, the build var job, which will pull the code from Git and create a var file for us. And then we have the image job that will copy the artifacts from the previous job into the workspace of the current job. And then the next step is going to be, since we're going to execute our image building commands on the Ansible controller node, the artifacts that we have copied need to be sent to the Ansible controller node. And that is what we are going to do next, so that once these artifacts are available on the Ansible controller node, it can run the Docker commands and build the image and push the image to the Docker hub. So let's do that now. So let's now go into the configuration mode for our job. Go to the build section, and then in the add a build step. Now here is where we're going to use the publish over SSH plugin that we installed at the beginning of this particular session. So we are going to click send files to execute commands over SSH, and we have set up our Ansible controller as our target server, so that is already here. Now what I want to do is I want to copy the war file, which in this case we only have one, so just going to say star.war file, and I have to tell it where on the remote server here being the Ansible controller node, this file should be copied. So I'm going to say slash home slash ans admin / project files. Okay, so that's what I will do. So this is for one of my files, which is the war file, and I'm going to do the same for my Docker file. So I'm going to say copy my Docker file into the same location. I'm also going to create the target folder on the Ansible controller machine. So I'm going to say add transfer set. Let's make sure that this is the first step in our process. Oh, it didn't move, so let me try it again. Okay, so this is our first set, and here in the exec command section of this transfer set, I'm going to just say mkdir home ANSAdmin proj files. What this does is it's going to create my target folder so that I can now copy the war file and the Docker file into the target folder. So click apply, click save, and now let's run it to see if it is going to work. Okay, let's see the console output. The console output says that it was able to connect to my Ansible controller machine. It transferred 0 plus 1 plus 1, so it transferred two files over SSH, and it finished successfully. So let's go back to our Ansible controller node and see if it is present there. So let's check what our directory is. I'm already there. Let's see what it created the project folders files. I'm going to project folders, change directory to project folders, and do an ls. So there you go. So you have your Docker file there, my dev pipeline.war file also present over there. So now my Ansible controller node has all the files it needs to create, to build an image and then push the image to the Docker Hub. So let's do that now. Okay, so we are now on the Jenkins dashboard. Let's click on this particular job, click configure, scroll to the section where we are going to add our Docker building, image building commands. All this code should be familiar to you. One small change that I made was to add a -p flag to the mkdir command. What this does is it will not fail if it tries to create a directory that it already exists. So the first time it runs fine, but second time without the -p flag, it will fail saying that the directory already exists. So -p flag will avoid that failure. So let's keep going down. Let's add another transfer set. Here is where I'm going to start putting my commands that will build my image. So the first thing is, since I copied all my Docker files and war file into this proj files folder, I have to do a change directory to that particular location. So let's do that. cd home nsadmin project files. So all that does is now I'm in that directory. Now I'm going to run a Docker command, Docker build command to build my image or create my image. So I'm going to call my image DevOps underscore demo. So what it will do is it will read the Docker file, which is currently present in the proj files folder, and creates an image by the name DevOps demo. Okay. Now the next step is I'm going to tag this image and make it close to the standard that Docker Hub has. So this is my original name and this is my new name. This is my Docker Hub ID and this is the name of the image. So this is my this is how I'm going to tag my image. And then next important step is to take this image and push it to Docker Hub. So Docker push and Nitikavi DevOps pipeline underscore demo, that's what it will do. It will try to push the image to the Docker Hub. And once everything is done, it will, I want to delete the image from my Ansible proj files location. Okay, so Docker RMI will try to do that. So this is this is how my Docker commands will look. So let's click apply, let's click save, and let's try to run it and let's see what happens. Okay, the build seems to have failed. Let us see why it has failed. Console output. Okay, so one thing I wanted to I wanted you all to make a note of is I'm going to make some mistakes which I initially did, and I'm going to show you how I corrected those mistakes so that in case you face the same mistakes, you know the reason behind it, and even if the error is not exactly the same, you know where to look and what to look for. Okay, so keep that in mind. Let's take a closer look at what this error is. It says got permission denied while trying to connect to the Docker daemon socket. All this means is that the user ID that we are trying to use to run our Docker commands does not have the rights to run the Docker commands. And if you remember, when we configured our Ansible controller machine as a destination machine for the publish over SSH plugin, we had specified ANS admin as our user ID. So in short, ANS admin does not have the rights to run the Docker commands. So what to do? So there are two ways that I know of to correct this issue. One is to make ANS admin part of a group called as Docker. So one option is to make this user a part of a group called as Docker, or the other option is to run these commands as sudo. So to make this user part of the group Docker, what we have to do is we have to go to MobaXterm and execute the following command. So if the Docker group does not exist, you have to create this group first. So group add Docker. After that, you do a user mod and add the ANS admin to this particular group, and then we reboot the machine. I'm not really executing these commands. I'm just showing you what these commands are, because this is not the preferred way of executing or granting privileges to our user. And the reason why this is not a preferred way is because by doing this, by making our user part of the Docker group, we are directly or rather indirectly making our user the root user. So any machine or any VM on which this container will be run, this user will gain root access to that particular machine. And that is not a good practice. That's a security hazard, and there are many articles, many papers online that will tell you not to do this. So what we're going to do is we are going to run these commands as a sudo. So let's see how to do that. It's very simple. Go back to our build, go back to configure, go back to our Docker commands, and just add the word sudo. Okay, let's click save. Let's build the image and let's see what happens. Let's go look at the console. Okay, it's trying to preparing, layer exists. And even though it says success here, it says denied requested access to the resources, denied authentication required. Let's see where it failed, right? So it built the image successfully, no problem with that. It's trying to push the image to this particular location, and then it failed, saying that the request was denied. That means I have to, in order to be able to push the image to a repository, I need to first authenticate myself to my Docker Hub. So how to do that? There are two ways of doing it. One is I can go back to my job, click configure, scroll down to my command section, and then here, just before the push command, I can say docker login -u, provide my whatever my user ID is, and then -p and my password, right? So this is one option. P equal to my password in user ID equal to whatever my user ID is. Now, obviously, not a good idea. Bad practice to put your password in the clear. So we will not do that. But this works. I mean, if you put the login ID here, if you are the only user who's ever going to use this, which is highly unlikely, you can put your user ID and user password here, and you can authenticate yourself. But there is a better way of doing that through Jenkins. Let's see what that way is. So to set up our user ID password in a better way, let's scroll to our build environment, click the use secret texts or files. So we can do that. And in the bindings, we can You can specify add username and password conjoined or username and password separated. So let's try this username and password separated, and let's call this username variable. Let's give it a name called as Docker user, and let's call this Docker pass. Okay. And then here I'm going to add specific credentials. So I'm going to click add, and this is where I'm going to specify my Docker Hub password, user ID, and password. Okay, click add. Okay, cancel, never. Okay, click. Now I can use these variables as my placeholders for my command. So I'm going to come here. I'm going to use the same thing here, docker sudo docker login -u. And now instead of giving the actual user ID and password, I'm going to use dollar docker user and password -p equal to dollar user pass. So what this is going to do is it is going to substitute the values of the Docker user and the Docker password from the secret key that I set here. So I had given my user ID to be Nitikavi, and I have given my password over here. So user ID, Docker user will be substituted by NITIKAVI, and the password will be substituted by whatever password I provided. So with this, I should be able to now log in successfully, and that authentication error should go away. So click save. Click build now. Now let us see what happens. Let's look at the console. Okay, it is still saying requested access to the resources denied authentication. Maybe I may have mistyped my password. Let me check that. Okay, actually it was not the password problem. I had given the variable name wrong here. So I should be saying docker pass. Click apply and save. And now let's try to run this again. Let's look at the console. Okay, so now I do not get any error, any authentication error, and my image should now be uploaded to Hub. So let's see what is happening on the Hub. Okay, it says last pushed a few seconds ago, which is 11:25, which is 11:25 by my clock over here right now. So this is the latest image that I pushed, right? So we have now successfully created an image, we have successfully tagged it, and we have successfully pushed the image to the Docker Hub. But there is still one problem, and I want you to really think about what that problem is, and we'll try to see how we can resolve that problem in the next video. So thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.